So today we come to the feast of the presentation of the Lord. It's sometimes also called the feast of the purification of Mary. So both are true. So let's take a look at this. Normally we're wearing green vestments, and it would be the fourth Sunday of the year. But this year it happened, a presentation, which is a feast of the Lord, happens to fall on a Sunday, and we do still continue then to celebrate that feast. So with that in mind, let's talk a little bit about this feast. There's a fulfillment of the law going on here. A firstborn male child who opens the womb. In other words, first of all, that child is firstborn, the firstborn of a woman. And then secondly, is a male child. That child is to be consecrated to the Lord. And so that's one reason they go to the temple here 40 days after Christmas, 40 days after his birth. It seems like a lot more than 40 days since Christmas, we all have such busy lives. But anyway, they went there to the temple to, first of all, fulfill that. Now, there's a second aspect of, after any birth, a woman who was for 40 days considered ritually unclean, and we'll look at that in a minute. Don't get too wrapped up in that. For 40 days, and then she would come back to the synagogue or the temple and be received back with prayers of blessing. Okay, now we'll look at that in a moment. But look, there's an additional thought about this feast that many people miss. It's a very dramatic moment in a way, if you know your history. And I've not heard too many people preach on this, except yours truly. But here we go. There's something dramatic that happens here, something for which people had longed for hundreds of years. So to set the stage for this, let's go back to 587 B.C. There is the terrible Judah had fallen into sin, had become weakened, and now we see that the Babylonians invade Judah and then Jerusalem, destroy the city, destroy the temple. But something else took place. The Ark of the Covenant, I brought over my little kind of scale model here. The Ark of the Covenant was also kind of lost, the lost Ark of the Covenant. And so we see that there is what was the Ark of the Covenant? Well, it was a box, had a lid, but basically it was said to carry the presence of God in Israel. So what we see then is that there is something very precious was lost to them. It's almost like a tabernacle, pointing forward to a tabernacle for us, that in that tabernacle dwells the presence of God. Well, in this ark was said, or upon this ark, the mercy seat was said to be the very presence of God in Israel, and it was obviously very revered, and kept inside the temple in the Holy of Holies, the back room, a very holy place. Now, in 587, as I say, the Babylonians destroyed Jerusalem and the temple. And what had happened to the Ark of the Covenant? Many said that Jeremiah had hid it in the caves nearby, or there were other rumors or traditions that developed, but nobody knew where the Ark was. And so when they were in Babylon, the survivors of that war, for 80 years, they were brought there in exile. And when some of them were permitted to come back, after about 80 years and rebuild the temple and the city of Jerusalem, they rebuilt the temple, and they built the room, the Holy of Holies, but there was no ark to put there, and it was never found. It hasn't been found to this day. Some people claim it's here, it's there, but at the end of the day, show me the money, huh? Come on. Well, we have it right over here in Ethiopia, over here, and come on, show me the money. All right, but anyway, so the ark has gone missing, and for almost 500 years. Would it ever be found? The lost Ark of the Covenant. And so again, now all of a sudden, here we are, 40 days after Jesus' birth, and the Ark and the presence of God returned to the temple. There's a great thing from Malachi chapter 3, who had prophesied that, and the Lord whom you seek will suddenly come to his temple, even the messenger of the covenant whom you delight in. Behold, he shall come. And the Lord has come. And it's not this ark they find, but the ark of the new covenant, Mary. And she is carrying the presence of the Lord in Israel in her arms. And they come into the temple area just outside the buildings, and the presence of God in Israel has returned. And yet only an old man, Simeon, and Anna, the prophetess, knew about it, noticed it. Everyone else went about business like it was just the most normal day ever. You see, God is so understated. This is a dramatic moment if you think about it. And yet only Joseph and Mary and Jesus and an old man and an old lady were there to celebrate it. It's incredible when you think, God is so humble. But anyway, this great dramatic moment remains lost to most. Even today, almost nobody comments on it like I just did. Anyway, enough said, but I don't mean to put myself on some pedestal. I'm just saying it just occurs to me how understated and how unremarked this incredible moment is. It's a great dramatic moment. A couple of other thoughts about the Feast of the Presentation I'd kind of like to share with you. Again, Joseph and Mary were told that any firstborn male who opens a womb, that is to say they are to come present to the Lord a sacrifice and have him consecrated to the Lord. So Simeon takes the child in his arms and blesses the child as is prescribed. So that's the first reason they come. But the second reason is that every woman after childbirth remained ritually unclean or impure for 40 days. Now, this gets, people are like, how dare you call it, is there nothing, you're turning it into evil. Well, first of all, there's nothing, ritual uncleanliness or ritual impurities have nothing to do with morality. Okay, it's not about a sin or she did something wrong. Secondly, although one might wish a better word could have been found, fundamentally, there was, I suppose, some people say a certain squeamishness that Jews had with bodily fluids like birth and afterbirth and blood and other things like this. There is some sense of uncleanness that's occurred. But of course, why do we have to be so negative about everything? If they were uptight about this, which is not my word, well, we're uptight about a few things, huh? How about like pronouns? And some people get uptight about. You see the vision. We're in a very uptight culture, and people are very easily offended and shocked, and we're kind of dainty and easily offended. And so, don't tell me that they were kind of uptight about a few things as if we weren't. All right, just different things. Now, at the end of the day, the bottom line, maybe to put it in a more positive way, that there were certain things that were very sacred, and so sacred were they, that one would spend some time reflecting before returning to the house of the Lord. So, for example, if one was had to bury a loved one, it is said that one was ritually unclean for a week if they touched a dead body or, human blood. Well, again, this are we saying that it's evil? No, it's a corporal work of mercy to bury the dead. So again, what we want to say here is that there's something sacred that's taken place. And maybe a better way to put it is that when you do something like that, take some time and reflect and then come back to the Lord and offer your gift. Now with childbirth, 40 days, a little bit longer, but think about this. In our culture, we rush women back to the public arena after they've given birth. Obviously it's a very profound thing physically and otherwise to give birth. And in the ancient cultures, particularly here among the Jews, they gave a woman ample time, 40 days, before she was expected to reappear in the general public and assume duties. I think that's very beautiful and charitable, and it also recognizes that this is very sacred, giving birth. So you see, you don't have to interpret it negative. Everybody wants to, because they're sort of down on the Bible, but don't do that, Try to find what's really going on here, and so on. Again, if you really want to hold, well, they were all kind of dainty and uptight about bodily fluids, fine, as if we weren't about things like that, all right, or other things. Now, so we see here, first of all, then, that there is this purification that takes place for Mary, but also, again, let's say that for all of us. Now, Mary did not have sin of any kind. We do. And really, then, before Jesus alone, then, this feast reminds us that Jesus, our Lord, comes to save us and cleanse us from all of our actual sins, unlike Mary, who didn't have them. And we read, for example, also in Malachi, but who may endure the day of the Lord's coming? Who can stand when he appears? So indeed, he's like a refiner's fire, the fuller's lye. He will sit refining and purifying silver and purify the sons of Levi, refining them like gold and silver, that they may offer due sacrifice to the Lord. See, and then our sacrifice will please the Lord in the days of old, as in years gone by. Okay, so the Lord, so there's an image here then in this Feast of the Presentation about the Lord that he comes to cleanse us, all right? I've got there's another aspect that this coming of the Lord is profoundly compelling in this sense. We're told that Jesus is no inconsequential figure. He's the one on whom all human history, collective and personal, hinges. The hinge is our choice, either for or against Jesus. So Simeon, holding Jesus in his arms, now looks at her and says, "This child of yours is destined for the fall and the rise of many in Israel, and a sign that will be contradicted." Goes on to say, "And you yourself a sword shall pierce, so that the thoughts of many hearts may be revealed." And so there's a kind of to borrow a phrase from Bishop Barron, Jesus compels a choice. Or to borrow a phrase I heard from another preacher, you are free to choose, but you are not free not to choose. That is to say, you have a decision to make about Jesus. You do, and so do I. And Jesus says in Matthew 12, for example, he says, "Whoever is not with me is against me, and whoever does not gather with me scatters." So again, there is just we have to make a decision about Jesus. Now you can say, well, what about people who never heard about him or didn't get raised the right way or whatever? Look, let the Lord sort all that out, but you and I know better, okay? And we need to help other people to know better, that they have a decision to make, and it's always going to be clearer to say, choose the Lord, rather than hope, well, maybe if I'm just dumb and ignorant, he'll let me in anyway. Don't do that. That is not what we are told. And how God handles people who are legitimately uninformed, that's between him and them. He hasn't revealed that, except to say, you and I have to make a decision about Jesus, who says to us, nobody comes to the Father except through me. No matter what you might have heard certain high-ranking clergy declare recently, only Jesus can get us to the Father. And again, let him work out those who can't reasonably know that. But we do know that. So we have done this. We have this beautiful image. Then, well, it's compelling. We'll call it that. A compelling image that Simeon says everyone has to make a decision about this child. It will lead to the fall of them or the rise of them. This child changes history. Everything depends on him and our decision regarding him. Do you see the idea? This is no just lovely little event. Okay, the Lord's come to us now, and he loves us, but he expects to be taken seriously. And we have to make decisions, not just say, oh, well, I like Jesus a lot, but then we just go off and do our own thing. We have a decision to make, and all our little decisions have to fit that one decision about him. And, we need to stop making light of just waywardness and get back into the business of having Jesus at the very center of our lives. Okay, now the final thing I want to say to you about this feast is that there's a communing that takes place here. In today's gospel, we also then read this. When they, namely Joseph and Mary, had fulfilled all the prescriptions of the law of the Lord, they returned to Galilee, to their own town of Nazareth, and the child grew and became strong and filled with wisdom, and the favor of the Lord was upon him. So just consider here the intimacy of Jesus dwelling with us in a very hidden way, but very close. For some 30 years, he's unknown. People don't, the old Negro spiritual, sweet little infant child, we didn't know who he was, And so, again, there's this beautiful intimacy that he just spends time living a normal family life, becoming a laborer. The Greek calls him tekton, a carpenter, but more than that, stonemason, a builder. And he builds and works among us, and he sanctifies our daily lives, our work, or just those daily things that we go through every day. And he lived it with us. And so there's a beautiful intimacy in the incarnation. This is a kind of a final chapter, a footnote, if you will, later of the Christmas feast, where Christ comes to intimately live with us, and we could touch our God, hear our God, see our God. And so again, let the Lord be presented to you today by Mother Mary. You know, she presented him to Simeon, to Anna the prophetess, and they were exalting about him. And yet, let her now come to you and to me and say, now look, this is the Father's Son, but he's also my son. Listen to him and do whatever he tells you. And let her lead you more fully to him, as she does so beautifully here in the gospel today. Happy feast of the presentation of the Lord. Amen.